Hi everyone, today we're working on this Schwinn High Sierra. So this is a black chrome bike, and you can see the head tube here is Phillip raised, which is pretty cool. They actually have their own head tube badge, Schwinn High Sierra. Looks pretty cool. You might be able to tell that the brake post mounts are a little bit high up. That's because this bike uses roller cane brakes. So the finish is in quite good condition. Not really any terrible chips or anything like that. No bad rust. Decals are still all intact. Just a few scuff marks and stuff, but we should be able to clean up some of those because the chrome is obviously quite hard wearing. Really like the colour of the decals on this as well. So the frame is a nice 4130 chromoly. It's not considerably heavy, so should ride quite nicely. You can see the Phillip raising is really tidy. They did a really good job. It didn't come with a seat post, and it's a 26.0 or thereabouts, but I have this 26.2 which is undersized, and the seat tube itself is a little bit oversized, so I should be able to take off the difference. Just sand that down a little bit. It's not really too far off. Sort of the first part slips in and then it gets a little bit harder, but it does go in pretty far. Just want to make it a little bit of a better fit, so we're just going to sand that off and then just keep going until it feels pretty good. That's quite nice, doesn't wobble or anything like that. Nice snug fit. So you could lay this up and get it all accurate and everything, but seat tubes are never exactly what they should be, so just thought sanding it until it feels nice makes sense. So greasing up the seat tube, make sure that that seat post isn't going to get stuck in there anytime soon. And then I put a little bit of grease on the seat post itself as well, and put that back in. Then we can finally put the frame up in the work stand and we can start working on it. So the frame did come with a bottom bracket, so we need to make sure that we can get that out. But luckily it was all just loose. For some reason it wasn't quite finger tight, but it was loose. So yeah, that came out nicely. These non-drive side adjustable cups, I've never had one of these get stuck before, especially when it's a steel one, so yeah, just come undone pretty easily. Don't have the exact tool for this side, so just use an adjustable there and that comes out. The headset I have is this one from AliExpress. Quite a nice looking one. You see on the left there it's a little bit more dull because I wanted it to be not quite as shiny as the frame, so I'm using a satin clear coat just to sort of dull the whole headset assembly on this bike. Because the black chrome looks quite nice, I'm not going to have polished alloy parts on it, so the aluminium parts. Normally I would polish the cranks and the stem, things like that, but I don't want that on this bike because I think it would be too much. Yeah, so the headset was one of those things that I just wanted to dull down a little bit. That'll also make the frame pop a bit better as well. So getting the headset installed, I always use a little bit of grease in the headset cups. Even though this is a sealed bearing headset, it just prevents them from sort of rusting and stuff. And putting in the fork. So these are pretty cheap headset. I think it's about 20 something New Zealand dollars plus some shipping. But pretty good quality. Just pretty easy to find sealed bearings as well if you do go through them. So I didn't know whether to use this fork mounted cable stop, but because it's a roller cam brake, you need a little bit more clearance. So I decided to use the one that goes in the headset. Just putting a little bit of grease in the stereo tube before putting the stem in. The stem we're using is this Nitto Technomic, and the handlebar is a Magic Components moth bar. I really like this handlebar. I've used this a few times. It's a really nice and wide back swept handlebar. So if you're taller or if you have wide shoulders, definitely recommend trying one of these. The brake levers we're using Suntour, as well as the shifters. There's a sticker on the chainstay, I think it said Dior, but we're going to be rocking Suntour parts on this. Just because the roller cams are Suntour as well, so I wanted to use some more Suntour components. So installing the shifters, basically it's a little shifter pod that you installed before. And then the rest of the shifter just attaches on top of that as well. Got some Uri grips for the bike. Going with a few little brown components, so we've got tannel tires and stuff. Uri grips don't have their own barring, so most people just use a coin. This is our 20-cent coin, and it fits the end of the handlebar quite nicely. It doesn't go inside the bar. You just put it in the end of the grip there and sort of make it flat. To install the grips, I use isopropyl alcohol. That's the coin in there, nice and flat. So just put in a little bit of ISO and then drip that on the handlebar. Then just slip the grip on. I used way too much ISO, you just need like a few drops really. But it all dissolves away. You just leave it overnight normally. Then it's all stuck in a really good place. Otherwise use hairspray or something like that. I've heard some people use paint as well, like clear coat, but hairspray normally works well. So these shifters, you can put them in 3 different positions. So you can see here, that's 1, 2, and 3 positions. Just if you want them in like a different spot. It comes in handy with back swept handlebars, and I really like the ratcheting function of them. So it ratchets one way and then just friction the other way. To clean the frame up, I just use some metal polish because it's a chrome finish. But a friend actually said that to get the black chrome, it's sort of like kind of anodized in a way. Because there's one spot on the top tube, I think, that's a little bit worn through. So the forks had some oxidization and stuff, and they actually polished up quite nicely. So just a bit grimy and stuff. You can see on the fork here, it's also got these mid-fork eyelets. But you might not be able to see, but on the inside there, it has this other extra little mounting point. I don't know if that's for fenders or something like that. But yeah, we won't be using those. The frame came up quite nicely. There's a few little chips and stuff, but really tidy bike. And these are the roller cams. So luckily they came with the bike because I've never actually seen a set for sale in New Zealand. I guess they would come up overseas and stuff, but yeah, just going through all the parts, making sure that we've got everything. This is one of them sort of assembled. And then it just uses this cam plate. Basically just the cable pulls up that cam plate and it pushes the arms in. So some of the parts are a little bit rusted, but not terribly so. Just a couple of bolts and stuff. But the arms themselves are in really good condition. It looks like we've pretty much got everything, just maybe a bolt or something is missing. But we've got all the pulleys and everything. And it is, you can see I'm going through here. I noticed that there's a spring perch missing. So like one of those, we've got 3 out of 4. So I came up with the idea, it's pretty much just a bolt. This is just an M5 that goes through where the pulley goes. And then the pulley rides on that, but also the spring stops on it. As well as cleaning up some of the bolts of the brakes. The cranks, they've rusted. So we've got to clean up those bolts as well. We're just going to polish things up. You can just use a vapor rust or something to remove the rust, but some of the things looked like barely rusted, so a little bit of polish, and then I'll go through and clean them off. So you just want to use some isopropyl alcohol to get rid of all the polishing compound and stuff, because we're going to clear coat them afterwards. Obviously, if you just left the polishing compound on, the paint just wouldn't stick at all. It would just fall right off. But for longevity's sake, it's best to clean it off and then clear coat it. It just gives it a bit more lifespan, really. There's all the bolts and everything all cleaned up. There's only a few of them that were quite bad, but most of them were just sort of like rust stained. The wheels that we're using, these ones are used on the Saracen, I think. So array of rims, just freewheel hubs. I did polish them up to use on the Saracen. They've since like oxidized and got all dirty and stuff. We're just going to white them up. I'm not going to repolish them because as I was saying before, I really don't want too many like polish components. This is a little bit too polished for what I wanted. But I mean, there's no point like going through and dulling that polish. it'll just naturally sort of dull over time. Taking the freewheel off. Luckily I've got the freewheel tool. This is just a regular Shimano one. The fuck? The freewheel was kind of stuck there, but eventually we get it undone.
There we go.
I can't actually remember if I pulled this off when I rebuilt the wheels. Did I? Maybe. I don't recognize that grease, which is the strange thing. I didn't know whether I would keep that dork disc on or not. Normally I would keep it if it was a metal one, but this is like sort of plastic and metal, like has a metal securing ring. Kind of strange. So just disassembling the hub now, undoing the hub cones, then go through and service the hub. Cone's still look in good condition. And pop out the drive side from there. Then we can go through, take out all the bearings. I just use a magnet. This is a magnet on like a little bit of a bottle cage. Kind of looks stupid, but it works really well. You know, you get those wheel speed sensors from old cycle computers and stuff. That's what it is. Some of them are really strong, so they work really well. Then just wiping out all the grease and everything. Making sure we've got none of the old stuff and old debris in that. Chucking some new grease in, and then once we've got the bearings and everything cleaned up, we'll put them back in. Bit of extra grease there just for good measure. Then we'll put the axle back through. Oh, the rear hub was a Sanson hub. I can't remember if there were Sanson hubs front and rear, but quite nice quality really. So putting a little bit of preload on them and then tightening up that lock nut. It's been really nicely, so a little bit of anti-seize on the freewheel threads and inside the freewheel itself. Bit of flicker in the background there, sorry. That's the frame rate with the lights. Just wiping out the freewheel a little bit. It's still in really good condition. Just tightening it down on there. You just do it hand tight, and then when you go to pedal for the first time, it tightens up all the way. Tires we're using on this bike are from AliExpress. Julia. It's the Tank A or Tank AliExpress brand. For some reason, they call these ones Julia or whatever. These are 26 by 2.25, but they run a little bit undersized. These were about 40 New Zealand dollars. For reference, a DTH costs about 60 New Zealand dollars. So a bit cheaper than a DTH, but not super cheap. But yeah, really good value. Seem really good quality. They are a folding bead as well. I think these measured around about 2.1. They are a little bit wider than a Gravel King. So not quite 2.25, but pretty good width. They look quite chunky on the rim. They installed nice and easily, but this is the first set of rims that I've put them on, so I'm sure on other rims they would have a little bit of a harder time. But they seated up nicely and everything, and the tan wall itself looks quite even. I've actually had some expensive tires that the tan wall is like wavy. I don't like this. I don't really like tire logos anyway. Even less so when it's like some random brand and like a bad looking logo. So I use some isopropyl alcohol to remove the tire logos. It took a while, but eventually they came off. The front tire logo, I actually just sanded off, and that came up nicely as well. Just had to be careful that you didn't go through the actual sidewall. But it's quite hardy, so I would just sand any in the future. Then like for the last little bits, take it off with isopropyl alcohol, but get through most of it with sanding. Reassembling the cranks now. We've polished up the bolts, the paint's dried and everything. These are Sugino Super Maxi. They are pretty flexy. These are 180mm ones as well, but yeah, I really like the look of them, and I think they would suit this bike quite nicely, so that's why I went with these. Had to try and remember which order the spacers and everything went in, so sort of like going through everything now. But yeah, there's a thick spacer and a thin one, so trying to get them in the right order so the chain rings are the right spacing. That's the big one there. And then I swapped them around and that looked too goofy, so changed it back. They're kind of a fiddly thing to assemble, putting all the chain rings and everything together, but you get there in the end. So these are sort of based on like the old TA Specialties setups. I think I used new Valor Orange bolts. I can't actually remember. On the Saracen video that I did a while ago. But if those are the bolts, then they rusted pretty quick. But clean them up and they look quite nice. I actually like the look of them now. They were like polished before, but that looks quite good. Nice little contrast. So the bottom bracket, I didn't have a 127 one, and I think that's what I used on the Saracen. But I have this 123, which it's the second best thing. So I thought I'd try that and see how that goes. But you really need quite a wide bottom bracket with these cranks, so I wasn't 100% sure. But I thought, we'll try it and see how it goes. So putting a bunch of grease in and everything. I used like a little bit extra there just so it sort of prevents water ingress and stuff getting into the threads. And wiping off the excess, putting a little bit on the tapers. We'll go through and put the cranks on now. And just tighten everything down to spec. It's not hitting just yet, so that's a good sign. But then we tighten it down and it's just barely touching the chainstay. You want a little bit of a gap though. So even if they were like just barely off it still wouldn't be wide enough. So the factory bottom bracket from the High Sierra still wasn't even wide enough. But I did have the spindle, which was 127. And paired with these Suntour GPX cups, we had a nice bottom bracket. So this bottom bracket was actually off the KHS road bike, I believe, the blue and pink one. But the spindle was toast. Like for some reason, the spindle was toast, but the cups were fine. So yeah, put those all together and we had enough clearance. It's a little bit close, but it's safe enough. I don't think the amount of BB flex and chainring flex and stuff is going to contact that. So we've got the nice Sugino crankcaps back on. Now onto the pedals. I've been sitting on these for a little while. These are Suntour XC2 pedals. Really nice bear traps. So I think I've got pretty much all Suntour components for this. Apart from, no, even the brake levers we've got Suntour. So pretty lucky with that. These plastic caps didn't want to come off, but using 6mm as well as long nose pliers, we managed to get this one off. Pretty good. The bearings did feel smooth and everything, but there was a little bit of rust on the spindles or the pedal axles. So I just wanted to take those out so we could clean them up and then clear coat them just to prevent that. And sure enough, all the cones and bearings and everything looked in good order. And the spindle on the inside is immaculate, really. So there's still some grease in there, so that's preventing rust on the inside. Everything looks really good. Got these all cleaned up, and then I couldn't remember which side was which, but luckily the stickers are facing like the proper way. So the 9/16 by 24 TPI sticker sort of gave that away. Then just putting some fresh grease in, getting my fingers out, and then putting the bearings back in the pedals. Kind of a slow process, but making sure that they all go in the right spot. There's been a few times before where I've just like banged the bearings in pretty quickly, and I haven't sort of pushed them into the bearing race before, and then when you go to put the spindle through, it sort of like jams up and everything. So now I just make sure that it's like in the bearing race properly. And just winding down the cone nut, leaving like a little bit of play, so that once we do down once we tighten down the locking nut, that sort of falls into spec. Really nice looking pedals. And now the spindle looks nice as well. We've cleaned up the exterior, but we didn't polish it up or anything like that. We just got rid of the old dust, basically. You can pull off these cages and everything if you do want to paint them or something, but not with this bike. Using a little bit of anti-seize in the pedal threads and putting the pedals on. You can see the crank arm has like a little bit of wear there, just some divots. Hasn't caused any issues though. Now we're going on to assembling the brakes. Luckily I have this Cannondale that has some roller cams, but I've never installed them before or set them up, so yeah, we're going to do this Cannondale up at some point. It's got all Suntour parts on it, like XC and everything, so quite nice. This one had 2 different springs. Luckily it was like a pair of each, but the Cannondale, it just had the ones with more of a bend front and rear, so I don't really know what the story is with that, if one is more mellow, but anyway. Assembling them is pretty simple. Just use like the more domed one on the dome side and the flatter one on the back side, basically. Just using a little bit of grease there, make sure that it goes tightly. Then this little spring perch. The spring, I don't know what you call that, spring holder? All the spring holder things, whatever you want to call those, they're all the same, so just put it in and then turn it around to the position you need it to. Putting the pulley in now, just using like a little bit of grease. Some of these pulleys are just brass, but these ones just have little brass inserts in them. Putting a little bit of grease everywhere. So one side of these is threaded, and then that little spring perch goes on the other side. So you don't want these to be tightened down. You want that pulley to move freely. So you sort of need to adjust this and then tighten things and just keep adjusting as you go. Just feeling it. Still got a little bit of movement. But as we tighten that perch down, it'll tighten it up a little bit. Yeah. Still spins nice and smoothly. That's it, pretty much all done. I'm putting a little bit of grease in there for the brake post. And that's one side done. So remember earlier how I was missing one of the bolts? So I came up with the solution of using like a can, just to sort of differentiate from the threads. I just didn't want the pulley riding on the threads the whole time. So a little bit of a can there, so it'll wear through that rather than the brass on the pulley. And then just pushing through the bolt, goes into the threads. And I found this little bolt. It's kind of not the same as the spring perch, but like it's a bit bigger, you can see there, but should work just fine. I'm putting the cane plates together. These are straightforward, it's just one little securing bolt. And that's them done. I've cleaned up the brake posts, just putting a little bit of grease on before we put the brakes on. I haven't set these up before, but we're going to go through it a little bit later in the video once we go to put the cables on. They seem pretty straightforward, probably a little bit easier than cantilever brakes, I would say. And after doing those a few times, don't really have any issues. This one, with that weird bolt, sort of clipped it, but I just shaved it down a little bit, and then it worked even better. And that's pretty much how they work. Just the cable pulls up on that cam plate and just pushes the brake arms in. We do have quite a mismatched group set, but these are the derailleurs that we're using. To Suntour VX on the rear, and then Litec, which has a sort of a reverse pull on the front derailleur. So the spring pushes it outwards, which is pretty cool. So releasing tension goes all the way out. Pretty strange. But we're using thumb shifters, so it's kind of handy to have a reverse pull derailleur either at the front or the rear. So quite nice. I've cleaned these derailleurs up before. I bought this frame the end of last year, and it just showed up like a few weeks ago, and we both sort of forgot about it and then trying to like chase it down and stuff. But yeah, showed up safely. I think these derailleurs are probably a little bit early for the frame, but I think with the roller cams and everything, it sort of ties in together, so it doesn't look too out of place. I really like this red derailleur because you can just sort of throw the chain through. You don't have to, feed it through. It just wraps around. It should shift quite nicely as well. Really cool looking derailleur. Just shifting it through the gears. Now we've got that cable on. A couple little tweaks to the limit screws and everything, and then it got through all the gears. Moving on to the brakes now, I'm using Cool Stop Eagle pads. In the front we just got the black ones, and then we're using the salmon compound in the rear. I'm just setting out similar how the process on cantilever brakes is for me. So I'll sort of rough in the pads at about the distance that I want them at. Set those up, and from there I can move like up to the cam plate and do like spring tension and stuff. So I sort of had the springs about where I wanted them to. You adjust these, there's different sort of ones for these roller cam brakes, but these ones you can just shift them and then tighten the caliper bolt down. So just getting the cam plate at the right height there. We actually got it really good. Then that's the bike pretty much all done. We put a basket on the front of it. It's a Wald 137 on top of a front rack. And we've got a Brooks B17 saddle on it. So the brakes were pretty easy to set up. I just went sort of back and forth between adjusting the pad sort of clearance and the spring tension. And then you sort of mess around with the cam plate height. Pretty easy to set up, I would say, though. And they feel quite nice. A little bit of a spring, but maybe we'll try some linear housing or compressionless housing later on. We're going to take the bike for a ride now, so I'll see you at the end of the video and let you know what I think. Thanks. These tyres, I am pretty impressed with them. I didn't know what to expect. I've had some CST tyres before and the tread is quite hard. I do have these up at about 40-ish PSI or a little bit less, and they're actually decent on gravel. You probably won't be able to see it in the video, but there's been like a few little wet roots and they've been predictable at this pressure.
He says as he almost asses out. Yeah, get through it. Yeah. This is pretty slick through here, and it's still riding. So better than like a slick, you know, the DTH or a Gravel King off-road. Definitely slower than a Gravel King, but not considerably slower than a DTH. So it's doing that. Duck. These handlebars just make everything cruisy. That Nishiki Alien I have, that's kind of close to being a race bike, or pretty much it's a race bike, but the wide ass backfoot handlebar just really like chills it out of it. Yeah. So, the downsides to this bike. The gearing. It needs to be lower, but it also needs more top end, because the freewheel size is what, like 14 or 13 to 28. It really doesn't give much range like across the back. And the front is 30 and it goes up to like a 52. So that's not particularly low. If I could find someone that has that Suntour Perfect, the 2-prong Suntour freewheel tool, I'll feel confident in putting that on. But because I can't take it off without the tool, don't really know if I want to run it just yet. I'll put out a thing. Someone should have the tool, but I don't know. We'll see. Oh yeah. The front derailleur, I really like that reverse pull. I tend to like reverse pull rear derailleurs as well. Just because when we're speeding up, both shifters go inwards, like towards me. It's pretty easy to get your head around. The only downside I found is because my brain's not used to the reverse pull, doing like a little trim adjust, I have to guess it. Like if you're just cruising along, not thinking about it, my brain hasn't calibrated to it yet. But I do really like it other than that. Absolutely beautiful. Got a nice little bush stuff through there. Out of 3, I would say bars 3 out of 3, bike 2 out of 3. It's not perfect, but it does ride really nicely. Brakes, I don't have them set up perfectly, so that's like a 1 or a 2 out of 3 at the moment. I'm impressed with them. I didn't think I would get them up to a point where I can skid on them first try. Well, you know, first ride anyway. This is on gravel though. Tires, like a 2 out of 3. I'll see how they go long term. They might be a 3 out of 3. They're a decent price. They look great. They're softer than some CST tires that I've had, so that might hurt their lifespan a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah, they're not super fast, but like, well, a lot cheaper than some more expensive tan walls, so pretty good. Yeah, the brakes, I might try a compressionless housing, so I'll order some Odyssey cables and see if that sort of improves it a little bit. it is more just set up than the cable itself. But yeah, obviously also the frame alignment, that might help, but the brake posts might just be sort of on the piss a little bit, so they might not actually come up any better. We will see. The bolt and everything. Overall, solid 2 out of 3. Impressive, but not perfect yet. Wow.
So that's pretty much all for today's video. We've got a couple of tweaks that we need to do to the bike. I'm not too sure if that frame, like the rear triangle, is being pushed in at some point, like an accident, or if they sort of jigged it up a bit wonky. But I mean, the brake works and I can no-hands the bike, like it tracks straight. So that's kind of strange. Really impressed with the roller cams. I didn't know how they would ride. I have rode the Cannondale, that pink one, and they definitely were lacking, but they did have old pads and stuff, so probably some cool stops would help that. And these ones work really well. They do trap like a little bit of mud, but not an excessive amount, so that's pretty good. Probably clear mud better than U-brakes, but yeah, apparently you can put U-brakes on these mounts as well, so something pretty handy to know. So really like the handling of the frame. It's cruisy but not too slack, and the handlebars suit it really nicely. I think I might try a stem that's about 10 millimeters longer. It did feel like a little bit too short at first, but then by the end of the ride it felt perfectly normal. Like I didn't have any pain or anything like that, and that, you know, my wrists and stuff felt like a pretty good angle. I did change the handlebar angle. It was a little bit too high up, so I sort of dropped it down a little bit. I'll still have to take it on some long rides and stuff to see that out. But really like the bike. Looks really good. Really happy with it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions, just leave them in the comment section down below. And next up, I've got a cyclocross conversion on an old road bike. So fingers crossed that turns out well. It's got quite a spindly fork on it, so hopefully it doesn't fold underneath me. But it's cross season and we're going to build some weird bikes, so I've got that coming up soon. Thanks for checking the video, and I'll see you again shortly. Bye!